about being dismissive of, well actually I don't know what it's dismissive of, but maybe you'll find out because I've mentioned being dismissive. Chapter was called Being Dismissive, but didn't mention it. So, films. Let's talk about films. Have you ever wondered, this is my notes say, they're really awful to read. Have you ever wondered why it is that we have such funny attitudes towards films? I mean, there are some films there's some films I watch that we think they're rubbish, so we never watch them again. And then there's other films which we watch and then we're like, that was okay, but I don't really want to watch it again because I know the storyline now and it'll be rubbish if I watch it a second time. And there's other films which you watch which are like really good and you want to watch them over and over again. Pardon? Like Lord of the Rings. Yes, Lord of the Rings, actually. Take Lord of the Rings. Anyway, Lord of the Rings actually isn't my favourite film. My favourite film is like an old lady's film. It's called Out of Africa, do you know? It's properly old womanly, isn't it?
The little ostrich at the egg at the end.
But it's got amazing soundtrack. Yes. It's got amazing. I think it's like a really beautiful film. Like you've got not particularly beautiful people, but the story is pretty beautiful, and then you've got beautiful countryside and everything else. We find some films boring when we watch them a second time. And so why is that? Why is that we watch a film and then we think, I don't want to watch that again because I've seen it. So you sit in front of it and you're like, oh, this is rubbish. You might enjoy it the first time, but then kind of through repetition it's not so good. So it's like
kind of like James Bond at Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah, like all James Bond films you watch, but then they're all the same anyway, so you've got one in there. Like with like church, you go to church, it's the same every week. You might sing slightly different songs, although they complain if you sing different songs. And you have basically the same praise. You say exactly the same thing for communion every time. So how do you stop being bored? You know, I don't know how you stop being bored at church. My granny is not bored, this isn't part of my notes, but she takes hard-boiled sweets. Good method. Because you read the Bible, how do you not get bored reading the Bible? Because it's the same story, right, every time. So, even if like a new version comes out, you know the ending, and it's not like, oh no, Jesus has died, what happens now? He goes back to life again. Same story. You know, if you're in Sunday school, you might get bored, but I don't know. So how do we stop ourselves just going to church and switching off? What do we do when the music kind of stops inspiring us and the teaching fails to encourage us or challenge us and stories of the miracles kind of fail to amaze us and we're like, oh yeah, and a miracle, great. Well, the first thing we can do is realise that we're not alone in kind of getting bored with church. We're only human. Humans get bored. You're probably already bored. There's many more pages to come. So let's have a look at the passage from Matthew. Thank you, Matthew.
Make an accent.
Jesus got it. He said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry or they may collapse on the way. His disciples answered, where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied, and a few small fish. He told the crowd to sit on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves, which he had given thanks, and when he had given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples to distribute among the people. They all ate and were satisfied. Afterwards, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of men who ate was 4,000. After Jesus sent the crowd away, he got into the boat and went into the vicinity of Magadan. So this isn't the feeding of the 5,000. No. That's part 2 of the talk then. Sorry, it's just the first part. This isn't the feeding of the 5,000, it's the feeding of the 4,000, right? So this passage comes directly afterwards the feeding of the 5,000 in the next chapter. This passage comes directly afterwards the feeding of the 5,000. This passage comes directly. You get deja vu. Yeah. So should the disciples have been. They're idiots. They've just been in the last chapter. They've had exactly the same situation. Jesus says, I need to feed these people because they're hungry. Look, I've gone off to a hill. I've tried to sit down on my own and rest and recuperate, but no, these people come, they want healing. So I heal them and I teach them, but then they get hungry because they didn't bring any food. And then he says, why don't we feed them? And the disciples say, because we haven't got any bread. Yeah, fools, you've just been with the bread of life. He's already done it once.
Should have brought hard-boiled sweets.
Should have brought hard-boiled sweets like my granny. They are possibly a bit thick. Maybe, disciples? Maybe they should have been talking about thickness. So I've got some possible reasons, apart from being thick, because I think we have the same disciples as thick. Marcus, I didn't say the disciples are thick. This tape has been edited. This tape has been edited.
You just do that.
So anyway, one reason the disciples didn't think that Jesus was going to feed them was geography, or geography, as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say. But you
No,
he's
not American.
So Jesus feeds 5,000. When he feeds 5,000, he feeds 5,000 Jews. 5,000 Jewish men, actually. There's like 30 or 40,000 people, probably, because of all the women and kids. But 5,000 Jewish men, he feeds them because he's like demonstrating to them, look, I am the Messiah. In the Old Testament, God fed you with bread from heaven because you were the Jews and you were his chosen people, and now I'm feeding you with bread because I'm his son and you're still the chosen people. Now he's feeding these 4,000 men and the Gentiles. He's gone across the lake, and so the Jewish disciples are possibly thinking, well, they're Gentiles, so they're not Jews, so maybe he won't feed them because in the Old Testament God didn't like them. We were his chosen people. Because these disciples, for their whole lives, like most of the Jewish nation, they've been kind of institutionalized into thinking that they were superior to all the other, which is a bit, so the disciples are a bit stupid because they've been with Jesus for like 2 years or something at this point, and they've already seen him do all these miracles. They've seen him show equality to people. They've seen that he hasn't distinguished between people, like in terms of how he does miracles. He hasn't said, "Oh no, you're Samaritan, I can't heal you," or anything like this. He's but the message just hasn't sunk in. Like they're just so institutionalized into thinking that they're superior that they're just used to assuming that God only works on them. And then, like Peter, even in like after Jesus has died and the Holy Spirit's come back, he still thinks like this. Like, you know that story in Acts where there's the centurion and he's like, "Oh, come and tell me about these scriptures of yours." And he's like, "I can't, you're a Gentile." "Oh wait, I had a dream. I must come and talk to you about the scriptures." That happens in Acts. So they probably didn't have the word racist anyway, I reckon, in those days, and it's kind of like a strong word, isn't it, to use. But possibly the disciples might be like a little bit kind of racist. It's probably a better word to use, isn't it? But I don't know what it is.
Bit discriminatory.
Prejudice.
Those words are really good words. Prejudice, discriminatory, and bigoted.
Oh yeah.
I didn't use any of those words though, you just did. Jesus, anyway, comes in and he kind of challenges that by doing this miracle in the Gentile area. He's challenging their view of God only providing for the Jews. But we have to think, are we prone to this kind of way of thinking? Are we, not necessarily racism, but are we prone to kind of being superior, thinking we're superior to people, or kind of discriminating in some ways against people who are like different? What's the question?
There wasn't a question, it was just, I was thinking, I'm not sure they were being discriminatory, I think they were being more just exclusive. And like, it's only for us, not for you. And it's not that they were discriminating.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm using the wrong word again. Exclusive is the correct word. Who told me discriminatory?
This is the thesaurus. See how many other posh words.
Yeah. The disciples did want to exclude these people because they were like, these miracles should be happening for the Jews. And we have to think, do we exclude people in... I've got some suggestions here. Do we just ignore people, as you would ignore actually, like people who are like very young or old, or parents, or visitors, or single people, or shy, or disabled people, or people who we think are cooler than us, or people from other countries, and so on? Do we just ignore them and kind of keep a distance from them because they're sort of different to us? I don't know. The Jews, these disciples wouldn't have thought of themselves as being exclusive. They wouldn't have thought of themselves as like excluding these people. It's kind of a bit like this. Another trap that we're kind of prone to fall into is like arrogance, isn't it? Like racism is a kind of form of arrogance. Being discriminatory is a kind of a form of arrogance. They wouldn't have wanted to think of themselves as it, but by assuming that God only cared about them and that Jesus wouldn't perform similar miracles among the Gentiles, they were kind of saying, we're superior, you know, our race is superior to your race, and you know, we have access to this God, you don't, you know, so we can first. Is it one of the things that causes us to be like dismiss God in church? Are we sometimes arrogant, so we come to church and we think, I've heard this story before, I'll just make sure I'm comfy, eat some McDonald's sweets, and just ignore the talk, because I've heard it before, I just dismiss this, because I know this one. I'm sure plenty of people who are like in the older generation dismiss talks from people in the younger generation because they think they're a young person, how can they have anything useful to say? And I've had this debate. It's something that we need to be aware of, isn't it, like amongst ourselves, like, are we arrogant people? It's not something that you can see in yourself, like racism. You can't tell if you're arrogant, you can't really tell if you're racist, unless someone tells you that you're being racist. Like, if you're an arrogant person, you're going to annoy people, and they're going to tell you off for annoying them.
Or it could be like a habit that you don't necessarily know you're doing.
Yeah, precisely. You don't know you're doing it, and so you get on people's nerves without realising it. It's a vicious circle. Because if you're arrogant, you're not going to think you're arrogant. The more arrogant you are, the less likely you are to think that you are. Which means that if you think that you're not, you probably are. Now what do we do? Oh, I don't know. But anyway, you're very unlikely to listen to somebody who can't know that you're arrogant. So that's like why it's useful to have like really good friends, isn't it? Like people who you can trust, people who, if you're not sure, you can ask, and people who, like, for example, in your side groups, we can just tell you you're being an idiot, you're being evaluating your life. No, they wouldn't say it like that. They say it in like a humble, kind of gentle way, and obviously not to try and insult people, because that's not good. Because I don't know why we might not tell people. Perhaps because we're English and we don't like upsetting people. Perhaps because Jesus says, take the plank out of your own eye first. But if we're good friends with each other, we should want them not to be upsetting other people and therefore like losing friends. Like if we don't tell them, we've got to question like our friendship with them and how much respect we have for them. You know, we have to be careful, obviously, of ourselves, not to just judge people all the time, not to sort of think, oh, he's arrogant, and tell him that straight away. But at the same time, you know, if it's like, on the other hand, we can be like the opposite of arrogant. We could be kind of anti-arrogance, kind of in the same way that some people think, oh, I'm so worthy to go in front of God today, I really deserve to be here. You get other people who are like, oh, I'm so unworthy. I totally don't deserve to be here. Look at all this stuff I've done this week. Look at all these arguments I've had with these people. I could never, ever deserve to come before God. Well, guess what? Doesn't matter. Because, the way I've said it here is quite good. But we trick ourselves into thinking that we're not worthy. But if we do, we're lying to ourselves, because the truth is that nobody is worthy, and nobody is any more worthy than anybody else. Doesn't work like that. The only reason we come before God is because of Jesus, and therefore it doesn't matter how we view ourselves. What matters is how God views us, and when God looks at us, He sees Jesus. So if we think to ourselves, I'm not worthy enough to come before him, we're actually just getting in a row line like a rubbish day, and then we go to church, and then I'm just thinking, I'd rather not be here. I'd rather, I've done all this stuff. And I just can't connect with God because I keep kind of thinking inwardly. And then you keep thinking, oh, I don't deserve to be here, I can't sing these words, I can't pray because I've got this mental barrier between me and God. That mental barrier was broken down when you became a Christian. It's just, four-dimensionally, it's more difficult to realise it. When you became a Christian, you realise, oh, all my sins, past and future and present, are forgiven. God knew that, that's why he allowed me to become a Christian. But then when you go off the rails or whatever, you kind of forget that and you think, actually, maybe today I don't deserve to come before God. Even though I know he already forgiven me for this, I don't deserve it. See, sometimes you have to kind of forcibly remember that yourself and kind of force yourself into thinking, actually, I can never deserve to come before God anyway, so it doesn't matter how I'm feeling, I'm going to force myself there. And that's one of the good things about having each other as well, because we can help each other. Not to feel, the same way that we can help each other not to be particularly arrogant, we can also help each other not to feel anti-arrogant, whatever it is. To be self-deprecating. And it's good to have like each other. It's really good to have the cell groups that we've got and the friendships that we've got. But the trouble is with this, that we can then form little groups, can't we? We like form little holy huddles and then like kind of cliques. This habit is like a proper Christian habit. To form like little cliques. You go to church and there's like loads of them. And the disciples are just the same, the Jews are just the same, in a kind of nationalist kind of way. So we kind of automatically, obviously, kind of gravitate towards people who are similar to us and who are our friends and who we see during the week. And it's cool because we see each other on Sunday night and it's the end of the week. And that's really good because all you want to do is just chill out. But then we do go to the pub after church, so it's kind of like, well, why don't we, when we're in church, spend time talking to people who we don't normally talk to and try and build bonds with people who aren't the same age, aren't the same background as us, like the men's breakfast. So we've got the men's breakfast on Saturday, and can doesn't mean men, it kind of means male, although we're all men here, especially you, Josh. Sorry.
The male hatred factory continues.
So like with regards to being comfortable, like as a Christian, we're not called to be comfortable people. We're designed to actually, as Christians, we're actually, out there to challenge. And I think that taking it to that extent is actually getting out of our holy comfortable huddles and actually being out and mixing is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a good way. And also we're also, as you're saying, such a big part of the wider community as well within the church. And the integration between all the different ages.
Yeah,
again, it's so good with the accountability, iron sharpens iron, you get so many people by speaking, it's different age groups and people are so much more wiser, and it's always great to have those people within your circles, within you as a mentor or someone else that you can just catch up to see what's going on, and it just completely refreshes your mind and the way you think about stuff.
Yeah, because you, me and Joel went to the mentor camp last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was pretty good stuff, I thought then. Like, for kind of like bonding with other. Yeah, and then the women have got your women thing, I don't know what I'm about.
There's cakes and knitting.
Knitting and prayer. Like, we're very guilty of kind of forming cliques and then excluding people. Especially with being like young adults, although not only young adults, but we really need to be careful in the church that we don't just go to church and just talk to our friends. We need to make friends with other people, we need to bond, we need to spot people who are new and speak to them and say, hi, I'm so-and-so and I go to this church regularly, so let me talk to you about what we do here. And the disciples, so yes, as you said, it's been pretty awful talk in terms of, I've mentioned the disciples being racist, the disciples were arrogant, the disciples were exclusivist, all of which possibly are heretical to say.
They're not.
No.
No?
They were people.
But they are people. You're not like saints.
I'm going to kick your head when you get up there.
That is
Catholicism.
capitalism.
Catholicism. church.
Yeah.
No, they weren't saints at the time, they made mistakes.
Yeah, they made mistakes. Possibly they just have bad memories though. That's my final point. Possibly they're just forgetful. Maybe we shouldn't be so hard on them. I mean, it's not new for God's chosen people to forget about him. Look at the entirety of the Old Testament. The book Deuteronomy, the word Deuteronomy means like to do with like reminding you of the law, and like all through it, it's like really, really repetitive because they're trying to drum it in. You know, the Israelites escaped from Egypt. They've got, you know, the children are being chucked into the Nile because the population is too big. They're being persecuted. They turn into slaves. God rescues them. They see these humongous miracles. They walk across the Red Sea on dry land. They get to the far side. Moses goes up the mountain, and what do? Melt down all the jewellery and make a new god. How can you forget? How can you do that? Either they're just stupid, or, I don't know, forgetful. But it's kind of natural for us as well to forget God, isn't it? Like we go into, we just go through life, and then we come up against a problem. The first thing we do is jump in, try and solve the problem. The first thing we do is not pray. In this case, the disciples see this crowd, 4,000 men, who knows, 20-odd thousand people. They see this huge problem. They forget that they're with Jesus. They just think, well, I mean, they're with Jesus. And they forget that, and they think, we need to solve this in like a worldly way. I mean, he's standing there, he's the bread of life, who's in the name, you know. We can turn to, if we forget about putting Jesus first, we can like forget and turn to other things, which is what these disciples do, which is what the people in the Old Testament do. We want an answer straight away, so we're waiting for an answer for something. We've been praying about it for a while, and then we just don't get one. So we just, right, I'm going to do it myself, or perhaps we just turn to like our religious practices, or to our habits, or something else, like maybe our friends, maybe to TV, or I don't know, sport or whatever. Anything that means we can forget about the problems we've got without bringing God into it. And some people, you know, they demand an answer. They demand a miracle right then and there. They're like, I want an answer for this now, and if you don't give me it, that's it. I'm not going to cooperate with you because you're my genie, God, and I want you to do what I want you to do now. And don't work like that because it's God. He wants us to be realistic, like Jesus wants the disciples to be realistic. You know, it's all very well expecting the miraculous, but sometimes we do need to face up to the problems that we have. There's like no point going to church and getting like really, really lost in the worship and being like, oh,